Alright, Breath of the Wild 2 is set for 2022, but do you think it's gonna come out in the holiday season? Honestly, I think it's gonna be a lot sooner than that. When it comes to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, Nintendo really delivered with a new trailer. And in that new trailer, we finally got a release window, a release year for the game, being 2022. But with the words of Zelda producer Eiji Aonuma saying that they're aiming for 2022, a lot of people believe that we might be seeing the game sometime around holiday season next year. And while that may seem like a long time, there is additional information along with the trailer of Breath of the Wild 2 that could suggest this game comes out a little earlier than what a lot of people expected. For me, I believe that Breath of the Wild 2 could release in early 2022. I'm not talking Pokemon Legends Arceus early, I'm talking more along the lines of March 2022. That's what I believe, and hopefully by the end of this video, I will make you believe as well. So if you're down for that energy, be sure to like the video and subscribe. Let's dive directly into the noise. Overall, I believe there's a strategy, a theme being put into place by Nintendo that recalls the strategy they used for the original Breath of the Wild, considering that March 2022 would be the 5th anniversary of the Nintendo Switch and The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. So a couple of things to note off of that is that having a game this big release around March isn't unheard of for Nintendo, and to have the original Breath of the Wild's 5th anniversary release being celebrated in such a big way, I feel that'll definitely make up for the unfortunate handling of the 35th anniversary of Zelda. And with Nintendo talking about how strong the Nintendo Switch has been going for almost 5 years, to mark that 5th year like this would be huge. And another thing to consider is the positioning of the trailers is pretty similar to that of the release of the original Breath of the Wild. Having the first release trailer be something of a story release teaser, and then the follow-up trailer finally showcasing gameplay. In the case of the original Breath of the Wild, we got one trailer in 2014 and another trailer finally in 2016, if you don't want to count that small gameplay teaser that we had in between. And with the case of Breath of the Wild 2, we got that teaser in 2019 and finally a gameplay trailer in 2021. So it seems like the positioning of the trailers is very similar to that of the original Breath of the Wild going into its release from its gameplay breakdown. And with some information from Bill Trinen at Nintendo, we are promised more information in the coming months when it comes to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, which to me harkens back to what they did with the original Breath of the Wild, having another trailer at the Game Awards and keeping that hype flowing with more trailers and more information and videos going into a March release that literally came afterwards. It's almost as if that Zelda has its own cycle when it comes to development and release. And considering another point from Bill Trinen, in which he's trying to convey that Breath of the Wild 2 will truly set itself apart from the original Breath of the Wild and Majora's Mask from those dark comparisons, in which he states that once you're done with the game, you will truly find out that this is its own title. Which makes me believe that with a statement like that, with someone like Bill Trinen, usually the head of Nintendo Treehouse in terms of marketing, playtesting, and translating the game, especially considering Bill Trinen's past work on Zelda titles, that a complete enough build of Breath of the Wild 2 already exists. Which could make a lot of sense considering these next few points. That this game, Breath of the Wild 2, seems to be pretty polished, almost as if it's near the point of true completion. The gameplay did not look rough, I didn't see any texture pop-ins or pop-outs, nor did the gameplay seem to lag a bit, which we did see a little bit in previous Breath of the Wild trailers. Like, to draw a heavy comparison, this game looks so much more complete than Pokemon Legends Arceus, because that first trailer looked incredibly rough when it came to the frame rate and performance issues. And that game is coming out in January, so if Nintendo's confident enough in Legends Arceus to release it around that time, I feel that Nintendo may be more than confident within a release window of March for Breath of the Wild 2. And that perceived confidence could go in line with a strategy that Nintendo has been doing as of late for the Nintendo Switch library of revealed games. While of course there are the exceptions such as Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3, but when it comes to their other titles such as Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Splatoon 2, Super Mario Odyssey, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, and even Metroid Dread, Nintendo seems to enjoy the strategy of fully showing off a game, its identity, and everything when that specific title is within a year of release from its true gameplay reveal. And that could indeed be the case for Breath of the Wild 2, considering its development time and the assets that it's using from the previous Breath of the Wild, and this game has been in development since at least October 2017. It all boils down to the point that once upon a time, Breath of the Wild 2 was really meant for 2021, but then those plans unfortunately had to be changed due to the pandemic. However, if what IGN Aonuma said is to be believed, then the development of the game went pretty smoothly. But of course, it was still affected. And then when we think about possibly having Breath of the Wild 2 being positioned in November or around holiday release of 2022, that means Nintendo will put it against Starfield, which I feel is a gamble due to the immense hype and anticipation that Starfield has in store, and the fact that Microsoft and Bethesda could really pull out all the stops in terms of promotion when it comes to that game being positioned in the holiday season of 2022. So with the idea of disposable income, it would make a lot of sense to have Breath of the Wild 2 positioned away from any type of competition like that. Hopefully an actual release window won't be that close to God of War Ragnarok either, because 2022 is gonna have some bangers for video gaming. And to cap it all off, to kick it into high gear, they could have the roll-off income from the previous holiday season go into the next holiday season if they position Breath of the Wild 2 in March. Have that game released in early 2022, have all the hype explode, the word of mouth spreads like wildfire, initial sales are going to be booming, and then have the people talk about the game throughout the rest of the year leading into the next holiday season of 2022, in which the game itself will be immensely popular by that point and then get even more popular for having everyone ask for it for the holidays. Basically trying to recreate the success of the original Breath of the Wild when it comes to the casual audience. Have this not only be a sequel in game, but a sequel in sales. And the thing that can really help out on top of all of that is of course the revelation of DLC that summer at E3, and if they're going to recreate what they did with the original Breath of the Wild and Age of Calamity, having Pack 1 release in June and Pack 2 release in November, having the full complete experience of added on content ready for the holiday season for people to pick up for their loved ones. And hey, this is all without saying about the Nintendo Switch Pro possibilities. I'm not saying that the Nintendo Switch Pro, or whatever you want to call it, could indeed release alongside of Breath of the Wild 2 in order to help move units, but it's not unheard of considering that Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild did release with the original Switch, and the Link's Awakening remake did release with the Nintendo Switch Lite. And if we're talking about Nintendo trying to recreate their strategies, then it could be possible if a Nintendo Switch Pro is going to be released alongside of that of the Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 in March, then we could hear about this supposed console from Nintendo themselves around the September season. And that could possibly explain why the fidelity of Breath of the Wild 2 looked so high. But at the same time, this game is being developed for the Nintendo Switch in mind from the start, unlike the original, which was developed for the Wii U. When it comes to a roadmap of how Nintendo could handle Breath of the Wild 2's promotion going into a supposed March 2022 release, they could possibly have another trailer sometime during September or even August when it comes to another Nintendo Direct. At this point, they don't have to really reveal the name if they don't want to, but just have a follow-up trailer with more gameplay, more teases of the story of Breath of the Wild 2 leading into the Game Awards this year. While before we were hoping that Breath of the Wild 2 could show up at previous Game Awards, now that the gameplay and the year of release is out of the bag, I feel that it is a very safe and a very valuable bet that the Game Awards 2021 will have Breath of the Wild 2 featured, and I will go out on a limb and take it further, stating that we might even learn the name of Breath of the Wild 2 at that show. It seems like something that Geoff Keighley would definitely want to have on lock, especially what he did with Breath of the Wild specifically before in his shows and with Elden Ring. And of course, to have this all spaced and positioned away from Skyward Sword HD's release, which is happening in July, Nintendo can really get the hype started for Breath of the Wild 2 in a March 2022 release date and help funnel back that hype after the release of Skyward Sword HD in order for people to pick up and play the game and get ready for the next Zelda title, considering that the skies is going to be a very important factor to both. And with that being said, that is why I believe that Breath of the Wild 2 could make it for a March 2022 release date. And if the Game Awards is going to reveal the title, I feel that the full blowout of assets, release date, full amiibos, all that good jazz could happen in a follow-up that could start as early as January. But let me know what you think, and when do you think Breath of the Wild 2 could release in 2022? Leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section below, and of course, like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to HMK for more awesome Breath of the Wild 2 content and videos. Big thanks to my Patreon supporters for making this video happen. If you want to find out how you can support HMK for just $1 a month, check out my info in the description box below. Alright guys, until the next hype video, this has been HMK. I'm ready for Breath of the Wild 2. Are you? We'll see as I check you guys later.